Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a live edition of Newsflash. And on the show today, we are reacting to the news that we have all been waiting for the course of nearly it has been more than 2 years for Robert Mueller. He has released the findings of investigation at long last. He's found no Trump-Russia conspiracy, but stopped short of exonerating the president on obstruction. That is a huge vindication for the president, who has been saying no collusion since really the investigation began. And now he will have the goods to back that statement up. Also, where does it lead the Democrats from here? And were we all wrong about this? A discussion that we will have to have definitely in the coming days. And who better have it with than the person who has been on the show really from the very beginning of the investigation to help us all understand it with his great job of following and informing us of every turn of it. So thank you so much to Glenn Bradford, who's agreed to, on short notice, literally just a few minutes really, agreed to join us today. So Glenn, thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, sure thing, Spencer. Glad to be on with you.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, last time, probably not the last time, but the last time we will be reacting to new information from the Mueller Report, probably, now that at least the summary is out, as William Barr, the Attorney General, released the summary of some of the key points that he found in the Mueller Report. So on the two main things, Russia conspiracy, collusion, stuff like that, no bueno, no dice on that one, according to Robert Mueller. But he did, as everyone will tell you, he did stop short of exonerating the president on obstruction of justice, but definitely did not let him off the hook nearly to the degree they let him off the hook for collusion. So yeah, definitely caused a lot of emotion, especially for the people who have been following this for so really years at this point. Seems crazy to say how time flies. But Glenn, when you first found out the information about this report, how were you feeling?
Well, I kind of expected. I wasn't surprised about the conspiracy part of it, because at least when. From yesterday, we knew that there weren't any new charges. And so based on that, you could kind of surmise that there weren't going to be any conspiracy charges. And so that didn't surprise me too much. But the obstruction of justice.
Conspiracy charges before we found out there would be no new indictments? Or
I was maybe 50-50. Yeah, I guess the thing that we need to understand about the conspiracy charge is that it's very difficult to prove. It's very difficult to make an airtight case that will stand up in court, because in order to prove make a conspiracy charge stick, you have to prove intent, and that means you have to get into the person's head. You'd have to get into Trump's head. And that's why it was so important that many legal analysts were saying that an in-person interview was so crucial for that. And since that didn't happen, it makes it even more difficult to prove that. So, yeah, I mean, there can be plenty of scandal in that area, collusion scandal. It's just not legally conspiracy, I think, just because it didn't rise to the level that you could prove that in a court of law. And Mueller is a prosecutor, and you saw him make his prosecutions against many individuals, and he typically didn't throw out a charge unless he was pretty sure he couldn't make it stick in court. A lot of the non-Russia charges about, tax fraud and bank fraud and so forth were pretty easy to prosecute in a trial, because they are basically paper crimes, and you don't have to prove intent or anything like that. Conspiracy is much more difficult.
Yeah, and that also obstruction of justice is in kind of way, like you talked about, getting inside Trump's head. That's something you have to do really to prove that. So, what was your reaction to kind of the halfway on the halfsy kind of I would call it from Marvel, like the not really willing to go all the way on the obstruction of justice charge?
Yeah, that kind of tells me that the prosecutors he was working with were divided on that. Probably some thought there was enough evidence there to charge him on obstruction, or at least make him an unindicted co-conspirator type thing, because since he is the president, you can't actually charge him. And then maybe, and then another half, or at least some number of his prosecutors didn't think there was enough evidence for that. And again, that notion of intent comes, and it's very difficult to prove. I mean, he dangled pardons. He fired Comey. He fired Sessions too, even though that really doesn't get any press. I mean, let's face it, he got rid of him, and we know why. It's because he wouldn't recuse himself, or he wouldn't unrecuse himself, from the probe. And so, the president has done a lot of things that you could consider obstruction of justice. He also, there's reports from within the White House that he wanted, his presidential counsel, or I forget his name right now, McGahn. He wanted McGahn to fire Mueller back in June, I think, of 2017. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, except for all his tweets.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, the tweets themselves are not good. So I think there was a pretty strong case to be made, but I'm not a legal expert.
Yeah, it's hard to really think of any kind of actions he took that were like for the investigation, like that would benefit the investigation. Like he seemed to, at any point in time, just wanted to obstruct the investigation in pretty much any way he can. Like, he was very against the investigation. Let's just say that. Maybe it was his advisors who kind of got in the better way of stopping him from doing like even worse, but actually firing Mueller. I mean, we know they did, but yeah, that's definitely the tough thing to deal with. My personal reaction to this report was kind of similar to yours, Glenn, because I wasn't really for really kind of a long time was not expecting too much from the Mueller report, because it was I didn't get the sense that there would be collusion, mostly because of what you said. There's such a high bar to prove, but yeah. The question, and to me, my focus really has been kind of on the other crimes that Trump is accused of, especially to do with the Southern District of New York, his actions with some kind of officials overseas, in his relationships with people like Saudi Arabia, all the stuff that's being investigated now, how he got all that money from like Deutsche Bank, all that stuff like that, and that Mueller has farmed out because it wasn't directly related to Russia and didn't really stick with his mandate. So. What can we expect from those, the SDNY, other like the Eastern District of Virginia, I think it is, that are also investigating? What can we expect from them in the upcoming days?
Well, it seems pretty clear that the campaign finance law that he broke when he, paid Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal that hush money, that case is still ongoing. There was, I think, a legal brief in the Cohen case where there were 18 pages of redacted text related to that charge, and so I think prosecutors in the Manhattan office are still looking into that. And it's an active case. And since Cohen has already been charged in that case, then you have to surmise that they're after somebody else. It could be Don Jr. It could be the chief financial officer of the Trump organization, Weisselberg. Is that his name?
Yeah, Alan Weisselberg. Wait, is this the charge to do with the meeting, or wait?
No, this is the hush money payments.
Oh, yeah, yeah, with the financial, yeah. Okay.
The SDNY
Uh-huh.
is looking at. And it could be the president. I think it could be any of those three people, or maybe all of them, because they came up with this phony reason why they were reimbursing Cohen, and the checks that were made out to him were, for retainers for legal expenses, when in fact they weren't. And then you have other investigations. You've got the investigation of the inauguration, where all that money went, and then you have the investigation into uh, the the Trump Foundation, um, and the New York State Attorney General is looking
Yep.
at that, and I guess and then I think the Trump organization in general is probably being scrutinized.
Yeah.
What kind of deals they made to get financing through Deutsche Bank, and that kind of
For the
weird
resorts and all that.
the weird relationship they had with Deutsche Bank. I think the president at one point sued Deutsche Bank, and Deutsche Bank was the only bank that was giving him loans at that point. Um, yeah, so all of those are still going on, and then of course you have the House committees
Yeah.
um, looking at all kinds of things.
Yeah, but no doubt this definitely was a pretty big victory for Trump that he's going to be able to commit, because if Robert Mueller of all people says no collusion, that's pretty much the best evidence of no collusion you can get, and that's what Trump's been saying nonstop for years and years. He said, quote, "It's a shame that our country had to go through this. To be honest, it's a shame that your president has had to go through this." Well, yeah, so that's, again, kind of not a lot of self-pity for him there, or not a lot of pity for me, at least, for him there. It was a total and complete exoneration, Trump also told reporters. He added that an illegal takedown, this was an illegal takedown, and that failed, and it obviously wasn't a complete and total exoneration, because literally Mueller said this report does not exonerate the president. Barr delivered the summary of the special counsel's findings to Congress on Sunday afternoon. Just to give you the timeline of the way things played out here, just days after the conclusion of the sprawling investigation into Russia's attempts to sabotage the 2016 election, and of course whether Trump and his associates helped Moscow do it in any way. But congressional Democrats have demanded more. The release of key findings could be the beginning of a lengthy constitutional battle between Congress and the Justice Department about how much of Mr. Mueller's full report will be made public. That's a big issue that a lot of people want to see: the full report, every evidence, a piece of evidence released, all the underlying documents and all that. What have you heard so far about like the willingness of Barr and his team to release the report?
Well, at least when he was being interviewed for the job, the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Democrats on the committee asked him about that, and he said he would try to be as forthcoming with the report itself as he could be, taking into account the Justice Department rules and regulations and so forth. They have to be careful that they don't give out sensitive information that could hurt people who are innocent, things like that. There might be some information in there that is highly sensitive from national security perspective that they might not want to reveal. But I think for the most part, he's stated publicly that he's willing to disclose as much of it as possible. I think William Barr realizes that there's an incredible amount of interest, not only in Congress but in the general public, and that if he didn't release it, many people would consider it a cover-up. There could, even though there's, he's been cleared on the conspiracy piece, there could still be a lot of scandalous